Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Annie Whitlock from Grand Valley State University, and this is my colleague.
I'm Linda Doornbos from Oakland University.
And we're here to talk about our recent TRSE article called Diving into Elementary Social Studies Instruction, What Teachers Report is Happening. So, in addition to Linda and I, we also had three other co-authors on this article that we want to shout out in this video. Dr. Annalisa Halverson and Dr. Jane Lowe from Michigan State, and Maggie DeMars, who was at Michigan State when we started this paper and who is now at, I think, Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, Madison. So thanks to all of them for their help with this article as well. So Linda and I, and really everyone in this paper are elementary social studies focused. And for decades, the literature has told us that high stakes testing has led to deprioritizing elementary social studies, particularly for marginalized and low SES communities. A lot of research from Paul Fitchett, Tina Hefner have shown that teachers feel the lack of autonomy when they want it, elementary teachers do. Race, gender, and controversial issues are often just avoided, especially lately. That's been an ongoing problem. We know that teachers have reported a desire to have more instructional time in social studies, but why hasn't it happened then, right? So why are we keep continuing to have this problem of a lack of time for social studies? And we kind of felt like we needed to dig deeper into kind of a more nuanced understanding of what that means to not have time for social studies. And really, it's about a lack of prioritization. So, what our study wanted to better understand are the challenges and barriers faced by elementary teachers in order to kind of really understand what is going on in elementary education. And we started in our home state of Michigan. So, our research questions are: what do Michigan elementary teachers report regarding how much time they devote to social studies instruction? So, let's get to hear it directly from the source. How much time do they spend on social studies? And then, particularly, how do Michigan elementary teachers explain their decision making regarding time for social studies? So, in our paper, we review literature, like I mentioned, from Hefner, Van Fossen, uh, Alleman and Brophy, and Annalisa Halverson, Nell Duke, like these important people in the field of elementary social studies, particularly around instructional time. We looked at literature about the decades of research on the lack of instructional time and about how little elementary teachers are prepared to teach social studies. We reviewed literature on students' background knowledge and skills. That's particularly important considering some of our findings, which Linda will talk about in a minute. We also talked about social studies integration, which is seen to be as kind of the fix for the lack of social studies time, and just kind of literature on school context and social studies, particularly around marginalized and low SES communities. Our theoretical framework for this study are we have a couple things we wanted to look at. So, teachers are experts in the classroom, and they are the decision makers. They make tons of decisions every single day. So we felt like that is guiding this study to really find the teachers' voices in this and what support they are reporting that they need. And then we also looked into like opportunity to learn. If social studies is not present in a classroom, then they can't learn it, which seems fairly obvious, but there we go. We aren't there yet. So what we embarked on was a mixed method study. We have quantitative and qualitative data that we collected simultaneously on a survey that we sent to every single school district in Michigan, and we had a kind of a larger research team beyond who beyond the authors of this paper. We had a larger research team of social studies professionals in Michigan that helped us with this, helped us design the survey and then also disseminate the survey. And we ended up with 765 elementary teachers responding to this survey. They represent all of Michigan's 83 counties. I think I'm getting that right. And so we had a wide range of responses, and a large number of them as well. The survey had 23 multiple choice questions about instructional time and kind of their familiarity with different social studies aspects like inquiry learning. And then we also had three open-ended questions at the end where teachers could talk about their barriers and challenges to teaching. We did pilot this study briefly with 11 teachers that we knew as like a convenience sample and just asked them for clarity and feedback on the wording of the questions. We made a few like grammatical changes before we sent it out, but the team spent a while, kind of designing exactly what we wanted to ask on this survey. So we ended up with quantitative data from the multiple choice questions, where we did some descriptive analysis, some inferential statistics so that we could compare different contexts. And then the three open-ended questions, we used qualitative methods of kind of generating codes and themes to kind of refine and apply themes to those particular questions. This paper is going to focus on one of those qualitative questions, which Linda will talk about in a minute. So why Michigan, I guess, in addition to the fact that we're all from there, and why would anyone care about the results from Michigan as far as national representation here? But we do feel like Michigan is kind of a representative state, if you will. Michigan, like many other states, has testing yearly in ELA and math, but only once in social studies in the elementary grades, fifth grade. Um, like many other states, Michigan's test scores, standardized test scores, are part of teacher evaluations, although recently it was changed from being a part of 40% of a teacher's end of year evaluation to 20, so that's good. There, like many other states, there have been divisive concepts bills and challenges of to books and book banning. Moms for Liberty members showing up at school boards all over the state, just like in many other places. So we felt like this kind of climate that elementary social studies is in is happening in Michigan as well as in a lot of other places. Michigan, I think, is still considered a swing state at this point, although it appears to have swung one way in 2024. We're quite notoriously the home of the DeVos family, and so education in our state, for better or for worse, mostly worse, has been influenced by the DeVos family and their tons of money. We do have a progressive governor at the moment, which is providing a favorable political climate so that we can actually advocate for social studies. When we started this paper before the 2024 elections, Michigan also had a trifecta of Democratic government. So we had a Democratic governor and a House and Senate run by Democrats. The 2024 election changed that a little bit. So we do not have that at the moment, but we still feel like overall it is a favorable political climate in Michigan to advocate, which is really kind of what we wanted to do with these results in the end, was show this to policymakers to get what we need. So I mentioned before this like larger research team that we have. And so this is what kind of makes, I think, Michigan a unique place to advocate for social studies. We have a ton of collaborative partnerships from social studies experts in the state all over. So professional organizations like the Michigan Council for the Social Studies, which is an NCSS affiliated council. We have ISD supervisors and consultants that work well together, teacher educators from many of our different universities, like Linda and I, and Annalisa and Jane. And we all had kind of the same idea that we wanted to get the lay of the land, like what exactly is happening, so that we could advocate in our respective contexts for what we find. I think we all work really well together, and we were able to come together to design this survey and then kind of take those results and branch out in many different places. So in addition to teacher educators and ISD supervisors, we had a representative from the Michigan Department of Education, our social studies consultant there, as well as representatives from other like social studies related nonprofit groups like the Michigan Center for Civic Ed. So I'm going to pass it over to Linda now so that she can actually talk about what the lay of the land is and what our findings were.
Yeah, so let's dive into the findings. Just a reminder that the first research question was about them reporting how much time they were giving social studies, and the second one was more about asking them to explain the decision making. And we talk about whether they made those decisions before designing or during while they're teaching. And so the research question one, we used quantitative data to come up with these three findings. It was just, first of all, just how much are they teaching? And we found that 60% of the sample were reported that they were doing at least 20 minutes. And about half said that that's between 21 and 40 minutes. That's rather a large span, which we talk about in our limitations. And that, with no surprise to most of you listening to this, is that upper elementary teachers teach significantly more time than lower L. But then what was surprising in this study is that teachers in non-majority white schools indicated that they were teaching more social studies time and taking more time than those in majority white schools. And definitely something we want to look more into at a different study because we didn't gather enough information on that cool finding. And then the ideal number of minutes, which is something that we thought was very unique that we asked, then we found a significant difference between how much teachers were actually teaching and what they said they wanted to, which we found so exciting. It means they want to teach social studies. However, there was this disturbing number of 15% of the sample reporting that 0 to 20 minutes was ideal. And then once again, we found that teachers in non-majority white schools were expressing more of an interest in teaching social studies. They want more time than the teachers in majority white schools. And then the third finding is that we asked them who determined the schedule, and 80% of the teachers said that they had some say. But what was interesting is that there was no significant difference between the teachers who had said they had a lot of say compared to those who didn't on the number of minutes being spent in social studies, teaching social studies. For research question two, that was talking about the decision making about when and how much they teach social studies. We discovered that the lack of time really didn't mean that they didn't have any time or there was no time. As Annie said earlier, it was more about prioritization. And of course, that is talking about the time spent with ELA and math because of the high stakes testing. They felt they have to do it with fidelity, which means they have to read and write and understand math. And that all came at the cost of social studies. Teachers also indicated that this feeling that students might not be ready for social studies, and they said that they just lack the background knowledge to be able to enter social studies. They might lack the ELA skills that they need, and that there was a misalignment of what students are expected and what they're able to do. And a lot of them cited the COVID learning loss term. And they also said that because social studies, they just don't have the resources and sometimes the teacher knowledge that they wish they had the content knowledge, that they need more prep time than in other areas. And the resources they do have are often outdated. They're often dry and boring, disorganized, or not appropriate for the grade level they're teaching. And so in our discussion, as we're addressing these issues, the lack of high quality social studies, we realized that the confounding time with context, that we are encouraged by the findings of non-majority white schools teaching higher amounts than non-majority white. And most studies are not showing that. So we were excited about that, but want to do more this paper really doesn't dive into that because we don't have enough information. The elusiveness of time, the study went beyond just the lack of time to their interest in wanting to teach more. And so we realized that it's not just about time, it's about enough time to teach it really well. And those decisions that are made before the research shows that in making all of those decisions, it just becomes this cognitive overload. And along with insufficient materials and lack of preparation, it's a lack of teacher effectiveness in being able to teach social studies. There's 4 implications that we drew from the findings is that it's time to rethink how we're embedding social studies. We are not advocating for mandating more time, but we do think that we need to mandate more attention that is brought to social studies. And that is to be thinking about how we can intentionally contextualize and embed it into existing curricula in large and small ways. We can reconceptualize how teachers can better integrate it into the literacy standards, integrate it into the multiple disciplines of math and science, and incorporate it into things that are already happening, whether they're non-academic or academic, such as talking about social studies during snack time, or when we're talking about the calendar, or developing classroom rules, problem solving. Another implication is that teachers really long for social studies professional development, and we really believe it should be during the contracted hours. Tailor it for elementary classrooms, intentionally talk about how do we integrate this inquiry and discussion and critical thinking throughout all the subjects, and then concentrate on the pedagogy and content knowledge so that teachers feel equipped to teach social studies. We believe we need to rethink planning time, that school leaders really need to structure planning time so that teachers have time to collaborate with their colleagues, and teacher preparation programs really need to make intentional choices about how they teach about the integration of social studies, math, and science, and address all those decisions that teachers are making, these pre-active decisions that can be complex and that can be underlying factors in being ineffective in bringing social studies into the classroom. And we realize, of course, that there's always limitations to studies. We know that this was a self-reported survey. We did not meet these teachers. It was purely just self-reported. We didn't do any interviews. We failed to ask the teachers if they taught social studies in a rotation, because if that's true, which is often called platooning, that would protect that social studies time. We wish that we had set the categories of minutes a little bit differently, because we feel like we lost some nuance in the way that we constructed the time. There's too much span between 21 and 40 and 0 and 21. And we feel there was an overrepresentation of teachers from rural areas, which means that the results maybe not accurately reflecting urban settings. And the study is descriptive rather than causal. And so concluding, we conclude that there is marginalization and neglect of social studies. That's no surprise. But what we do feel that the study offers the field is to think about why this is happening, because it's more nuanced and complex than just saying that there's no time, as we just talked about. And we are excited that teachers want to teach more social studies, and we need to do something about it because they are concerned that students don't have adequate background knowledge and the skills needed, that there's lack of preparation time, and that cognitive load of those decisions just hinders them from being able to teach social studies well. So you can find out all of the more wonderful details by finding the paper and reading that. But hopefully this gives you a broad overview. And those are the emails of the authors. I don't know if Maggie's is still correct, but if you would contact Annalisa or Jane, they would know where Maggie is located now, right, Annie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all.